Hey everyone, good evening and welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide, and servant on the journey of healing. What's my name? Big Papa Bryan Post. Happy Monday everyone. In this episode we're going to be talking about how to effectively discipline your child. I did on Instagram, I do a little show on Instagram every day called 60-Second Parenting. And it's just a 1-minute little quick parenting tidbit. And today we did it on love and discipline. And I got a lot of feedback and a lot of questions. People's, wanting more information about discipline because historically, traditionally, when we think about discipline, we think about punishment. And that's wrong thinking. That's not the thinking. And I don't even like to use that word wrong. Ultimately, I believe that there isn't any right or wrong. I believe we do what we do and we get the results that we get. So when I say wrong thinking, I'm going to scratch that, take that back, cancel. And I'm just going to say there's one way of doing things. You're going to get one result with your child. And then there's another way of doing things. You're going to get a different result. And I believe the traditional way in which we approach discipline is one, especially when it's based in punishment, when it's based in fear, when it's based in stress. It's one that's going to cause us to lose relationship with our children. And ultimately, the goal needs to be to gain relationship because you may be able to use fear and power and control when your children are small. But when they get older, they're not going to go for that. They're going to fight back. They're going to rebel. They're going to act out. And the other thing is fear and control and punishment. They don't help your children develop internal mechanisms of control. So when you think about an internal mechanism of control, ultimately that's what we always want for our children. We want our children, when they get older and they encounter stress, we want them to be able to make clear decisions. We want them to make good decisions. We want them to be able to make decisions that don't get them in trouble. When they're adolescents, we want them to be able to say, no, I don't think I'm going to do that drug. And when they become young adults, no, I don't think I want to go there. And I don't think I want to do that. Well, there's something very important that is at play when a child is able to make that decision. And that's called an internal locus of control. So internally, they have a regulatory window that allows them to deal with peer pressure. It allows them to not go above, go outside of their window of tolerance and do things that overwhelm them, that they feel internally doesn't feel good to them. It doesn't line up to the values and the morals and the beliefs that you've bestowed on them. So when you have spent a lot of time when your children are young, focused on punishment and control and fear, and they get older and they start to rebel, then what they're not getting during that focus, that early focus, is they're not getting that development of the internal locus of control. And that's really where relationship comes into play. Relationship is helping to nurture that internal locus of control for your child, and develop that internal regulatory system so that when they get older, they're able to rely on that regulatory window to make those decisions and to live according to those morals and those values and those ethics that you've raised them with. So it's just simply thinking about it in the context of when you're using power and control and force in our traditional definition of discipline, punishment, because that's pretty much how we see it. When you're using and operating from that method, then you are exerting external control over your child's behavior. Well, we want to shift that. We don't want to have to exert external control over our children's behavior. We want to be able to have develop a relationship strong enough that creates influence so that we're able to influence their behavior, which still allows them to be the guide of it. They're still in control of it. Ultimately, they're the ones who make the decision, but it's our input and it's our regulatory ability that allows them to develop that internal mechanism of control, that internal locus of control, that they can make those decisions based on those ethics, morals, and values that you've set for them. So the definition of discipline and the way I want you to think about it is the definition of discipline is to teach, not to punish. And so I've got a couple of real clear thoughts that I want you to put in your head when you start thinking about discipline. Number one, if the definition of discipline is to teach, not to punish, then we have to remember Joseph Ledoux' scientific finding that I've been quoting this for years and years and years because I just think it's so powerful, that in times of stress, our thinking processes become confused and distorted. In times of stress, our thinking processes become confused and distorted, and our short-term memory is suppressed. So I'm not going to write that down because I've got something else I want to put on the board. But in times of stress, our thinking processes become confused and distorted, and our short-term memory is suppressed. So if you think about discipline, if the discipline you are using is actually creating more stress for your child, they are not thinking clearly, and they're not going to be able to remember. That is so very important. It doesn't matter how much force you use. It doesn't matter how loud you get. It doesn't matter what you take away. The underlying mechanism that is occurring is you're using external force to control their behavior, which ultimately is stressing them out, which is causing their thinking to become confused and distorted and suppressing their short-term memory. So remember, the definition of discipline is to teach, not to punish. If you want to be an effective disciple, which is an effective teacher, and you want to have effective discipline, then you want your child to be in the right state of mind. You want them to be in a clear, concise state of thinking. You want their short-term memory to be active and available so that they can store those lessons that you're trying to teach them. The other one comes from the Bible because we always believe, we've kind of been conditioned to believe, and with that Bible verse, spare the rod, spoil the child, and we really take that and tie that into discipline. That's really, for a lot of us, our justification for punishment. It's our justification for spanking and hitting and the use of force with our children. And I just want to try to clarify that for you just a little bit. The rod and the staff were used by the shepherd to raise the sheep. Okay, so the shepherd used a rod to guide the sheep and used a staff to pull them back in the line when they would stray. So spare the rod, spoil the child actually means spare the child guidance and he will be spoiled to the ways of the world. So if you think about that from the perspective of the shepherd and the sheep, if the shepherd used the rod and hit the sheep over the head with them, what would happen to the sheep? They would stray. So they would run from the shepherd because they would be frightened. And if the sheep run from the shepherd, what's going to happen once they get off into the woods? Well, they're going to get eaten by the wolves, right? Because they're helpless at that point in time. So I like to go back to that proverb that says, raise up a child in the way he shall go, and when he is mature, he will not depart from it. See, it's very important. You can tie these biblical principles all together if you'll just think about them different than the fear and the control that we've been raised with and that we've been conditioned with. So what I want to do is I want to go over the parenting continuum with you. And the parenting continuum, I'm just going to do this here in red, and then I'm going to do this over here in blue. The parenting continuum, there's two sides of it. One side is fear, and the other side is love. And I always use a number line. So I go out here and I got +1, positive 2, +3, +4, all the way out to +100. And over here we have the same, -1, -2, -3, all the way out to -100. Well, -100 and +100 have two very different and extreme meanings. Right here, we have your traditional parenting practices. So we're talking about spare the rod, spoil the child. So let's go ahead and put spanking here. And then another very common one is timeout. And then another very common one is consequences. And on another session, I'll go and I'll talk about these things specifically. And another one here is medication. And I always say medication over relationships and environments. So medication without modification to relationships and the environments. And then we have things like restraint. And then we have isolation. And the list goes on and on. And the significance here is I want you to think about these because these are the most common things that we do in parenting. Okay, you can put yelling on there. Just Just think about the most common things that we do in parenting. And now over here on the love-based side, see, this is the side also that teaches responsibility. Because what's important about responsibility is responsibility requires thought. It requires thinking. Whereas over here on the fear-based side, we have reactivity. Reactivity doesn't require any thinking. It's automatic. So it just happens. Child does something, bam. They do something else, bam. There's no thinking. And in fact, a lot of times in a fear-based reactive place, when you're engaging your child in that reactive moment, all you're doing is trying to regain some kind of control because you actually feel stressed and afraid. So you're actually trying to suppress the behavior because the behavior makes you feel bad. So instead of breathing through and acknowledging how you're feeling and then being able to understand where your child is coming from, you immediately jump on them. And so that's no thinking. There's no thought involved in that. So over here on the love and the responsibility side, now we have things that actually take effort, because these things over here actually don't take any effort. You can do these things oftentimes without even getting up. So we have things like time in. We have things like understanding. We have things like affection. We have discipline. Not punishment, but teaching. It's slowing down. It's taking time. We have, what's another one? Another one, time in, understanding, affection, discipline, relating, which requires you to connect with your child, requires you to relate to where they're at, requires you to relate to where they're coming from. Another one would be doing homework with them. Turning off the television. See, all these things require effort. Now, here's the question. If these are all things on the love and responsibility side, and these are all things over on the fear and reactivity side, why do we do these things so readily? Can you answer that question? I'm going to tell you why. We do these things over here because they work. I'm going to say that again. We do these things over here on the fear and reactivity side because they work with 70% of children. With 70% of children, we can do these things over here and we can get the outcome that we're looking to get. We can get the child, they stop talking back. They go and take out the trash like they were asked to, or they'll, go clean up their room. 70% of the children, you might get a little bit of feedback, a little bit of rolling eyes and huffing and puffing, but very little. They'll go do. These children over here on the 70%, you can raise your eyebrow and they'll go do what you ask them to do. But there's a secret to this. And this is something we don't think about a lot of times because so much of our parenting is just cultural. It's just conditioning. With 70% of the children, anything you do will work. With the 70%, anything you do will work. Do you know why? Because they have a brain that can handle stress. With 70% of children, they have a brain that can tolerate stress. So they can get dysregulated. You can use any of these mechanisms with them. And in a short period of time, they'll move into behavioral conformity. So they'll do what you ask them to do. The problem is you're still stressing them out and you're still severing your relationship. It makes you feel better for a short period of time because they respond to you. But in reality, for the long haul, you're putting your relationship with your child at risk when, in fact, you could use all of these over here, especially with the 70%. With the 70%, all you got to do is say, honey, come sit down. Son, let's go take a walk. Let's go take a drive. Let's go shoot some basketball. Let's go shoot some baskets and let's talk. Let's do some homework and let me help you with it. So you can do that with the 70% because their brains respond and that develops relationship. With the 30%, these things over here, they just make it worse. The 30%, they make it worse because their brains can't tolerate the stress the same way a child with normal, healthy development can. And you got to be really mindful of that because you may think that you've got a child in the 70% category and they've got some early stress and some early trauma and they may be responding to you in a certain way, but in fact, you're actually putting your relationship with him at risk. So when it comes to discipline, the key is making sure, number one, your child is calm. If your child acts out, don't jump on them right at that moment. It's better for you to stop, take 3 to 10 deep breaths, walk away, leave it alone. Because 9 times out of 10, your child already knows they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. But they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing because they're stressed out. So leave it alone. Back away for a little bit. Go calm yourself down, because remember, immediately you want to jump on them. So back away, calm yourself down, and then later come back, think about it while you've gone away. Think about what's going on with my child that would cause him to do that. Give that some thought, and then come back later on and talk to him. Give everyone time to calm down. It's going to make a whole lot of difference. So I hope that's helpful for you. So before I go, I just want to say that this is actually Cyber Monday. And many of you all have seen our Black Friday specials. And I want to tell you about something that I've got. I've got 12 bottles of this supplement called relaxation oil. And it's CBD oil. And I don't know if you know anything about CBD, but CBD is cannabidol oil. It's cannabidol oil. And it comes from the plant of marijuana. It comes from the whole plant. But it is the part of the plant that does not get you high. It is actually the therapeutic part of it. So there's no THC in CBD oil. And I know you've probably been seeing a lot of this lately because people are really starting to talk about it because it's so effective with stress and anxiety and inflammation and pain. Well, I have a very limited quantity of the CBD oil because I've been experimenting with it. I've got some friends who've been trying it because I'm interested in seeing how it affects parents and seeing if it helps you to be able to achieve just a stronger window of tolerance and to be able to regulate. So I only had 20 bottles of this when we started the Black Friday special. And right now I've got 12 left. And I really want to see if it is helpful on a little bigger scale. So far, I've tried it. Everyone I've had try it so far, it is very effective. So I really want to encourage you, if you need a little extra stress and relaxation support, it's completely legal. It doesn't have anything that's going to get you in trouble. It's just a therapeutic component. So, and it's very helpful. So far, I've had great results. My friends have had great results. I have 12 bottles of this left. You can go to BryansBest.com. And you can read more about it. I actually did another little video. You can see what's there. I've got 12 bottles left. And if you think you could use a little extra support, a little regulatory support, a little more calm, I want you to go check it out. And finally, postblackfriday.com. We still have a couple of things available. These offers end at midnight tonight. So at midnight tonight, this page will no longer be available, and this page will no longer be available. So I want you to go check these out if you have an opportunity, if you're interested. Again, BryansBest.com for the CBD. I call it relaxation oil. Give it a shot, see what you think. And I'm really trying to consider whether or not we make this available to our parents on a wider scale or not. But I want to get a little more feedback before I do that. So BryansBest.com and then postblackfriday.com for a couple of the other things that we had for Black Friday and also through Cyber Monday. Remember, these things end at midnight tonight. So remember, in any given situation, we always have two choices. We can continue to react from the same imprints of overwhelm and stress and fear and shock, or we can stop. We can take 3 to 10 deep breaths. We can slow down. We can think, and then we can choose love. I hope you'll choose love. God bless your family. I hope you guys have a good evening. I hope you go to bed tonight and you wake up restored and refreshed and ready to conquer a new day. And we'll see you tomorrow.